Phantasm, the delusion of a disordered mind, a phantom, a spirit, a ghost. For 10 years, the secret of Perigord Cemetery has remained a mystery. Now, 3 innocent people are about to discover the ultimate evil.
Welcome back to episode 2 of Late Night Lycanthrope Nightmare Reviews. I'm your host, Kyle Martin. Today, we are going to be talking about one of the greatest sequels ever made in the horror genre, I would say. Phantasm 2.
You think that when you die, you go to heaven. You come to us.
Written and directed by Coscarelli, who wrote and directed the first Phantasm movie. One of the great things about this movie off the bat is that, so Phantasm 1 was made in the 70s, and it feels like a 70s movie. It's a psychological thriller. And after you watch the first Phantasm movie, you're just left with, what the hell did I just watch? And you don't really know what happens in the first Phantasm movie. It just kind of is there, and and you watch it, and you're like, okay, that was that. But it's just enough where you're like, not putting too much of your own thoughts into it. It gives you enough story where it's engaging and you're into it all the way. It's just a great psychological thriller. It's like a nightmare. How you remember a nightmare, you don't really remember the specific details of it, but you remember enough to feel the impact that it had on you. Phantasm 2 is an action movie with those nightmarish elements. It's amazing. It has this Sam Raimi feel to it. I read that Sam Raimi visited the set multiple times, so I don't know if he had like a creative influence, that much into it, but there are moments in this movie that you feel that kinetic Evil Dead Sam Raimi energy throughout it. There's a scene in this movie where we are in the ball's point of view and it crashes through multiple doors. And that's an obvious Sam Raimi, iconic shot from Evil Dead when the camera pans through and crashes into the doors. It does what sequels should do. It takes everything good about the first movie, it takes all those elements, and it amps it up to 11. Phantasm 2, the storyline is much more linear. There's still that idea of we don't know what's real and what's not, but it's much more dialed back, and instead, in its place, we are given more action.
Come on, you mother!
Which isn't, it's not a disservice to the movie at all. It needs to be different from the first movie, and that's why this movie is great. It's its own thing. It still takes all those elements, but it's its own movie. You don't have to watch... I don't think you have to watch the first Phantasm movie to enjoy Phantasm 2. That's what's great about it. I saw Phantasm 2 before I saw Phantasm. I saw this movie late night on Stars when I was really young. And I loved every second of it. This movie is a combination of horror, comedy, and a road movie, and action as well. That's why I love road movies. I wrote a script that is about werewolves, and it has elements of road movies in them. I love movies that are about characters going on the road and on a mission. Men on a mission on the road is my favorite genre. What this movie also has about it that makes it great are flamethrowers. I am a sucker for movies with flamethrowers. Kurt Russell in The Thing, amazing. When he's just lighting up those aliens, amazing. Phantasm 2, they break into a hardware store when they're about, right before they're about to go hunt down the tall man. They break into a hardware store. They compile all these mini propane tanks together to make this flamethrower. Reggie takes 4 shotguns and puts them together to make a quadruple shotgun. It's insane, but you go along with it because you know what kind of movie you're in at that point. You know, it's this hyperkinetic, Sam Raimi styled horror movie with this action element underneath it. It's just such a pure and just great movie. Don Coscarelli, I think, is one of the most underrated directors in the horror genre. He only really got to make Phantasm movies throughout his entire career. He got to make Beastmaster, which got taken away. He did Beastmaster right after Phantasm. And Beastmaster kind of got taken away from him by the producers, so he doesn't really acknowledge that movie as his own. And then he went back to Phantasm 2, and then he fell into doing just Phantasm 3 and Phantasm 4, because, you know, that was his bread and butter, and there's nothing wrong with that. And he made Bubba Hotep, which has a huge cult following. And then he also just recently came out with John Dies at the End. I haven't seen it yet, but I've been meaning to check it out. But I really think Phantasm 2 is his best movie, in my opinion. It's a studio movie. Universal developed this movie. They gave him, I think it was like $6 million to make this movie. It was just like, I think 3 times more than the original Phantasm movie. That money was not wasted at all. The special effects are amped up to 11. You got Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger of K&B back there, you know, pulling off these great 80s effects. There's a scene in which the ball flies past a priest and cuts his ear off, and then it flies back into his head and spurts out the blood like that classic scene in the first Phantasm movie. And it's so well done, and it still holds up on Blu-ray. You know, you don't really see the lines, and that's why, you know, Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger have gone on to have successful careers in special makeup effects, and they're still doing it to this day. You know, when Don Coscarelli was first developing Phantasm 2, the studio wanted to recast the 2 leads of Reggie and Mike, but Don really wanted to bring back the 2 original actors from the first Phantasm movie, Reggie Bannister and A. Michael Baldwin. The studio and him went back and forth on it for a while, but then they were like, okay, you can have one of them. We got to recast the other. And it was a Sophie's choice for him, and he didn't really think that anyone else could play that Reggie part besides Reggie Bannister.
Come on, you mother!
So he had to give up A. Michael Baldwin to get Reggie Bannister back into the movie. You know, unfortunately, A. Michael Baldwin couldn't come back to do Phantasm 2, but they got an actor named James LeGros. In my opinion, is better than A. Michael Baldwin in the subsequent sequels that followed. I really like him in this movie. He's a fresh face. He has that like all-American boy quality to him, and you just like instantly just have a connection with him, I feel like, from the beginning. Him and Reggie have this banter between each other that feels seamless. It feels like, you know, he could have been in the first movie. It's carried all the way through that movie. It shows that they really spent a lot of time together and developed that relationship. There is the character of Liz, who was first introduced. It was introduced in the first scene of the movie, and Liz has a psychic connection with Mike, and she knows that the tall man is after her family. And so she kind of sends out this, you know, plea to Mike to come find her and help her. That really is the kickstart of the entire movie, is that Mike gets out of this institution that he's been in for quite some time, and him and Reggie set out to go find and help Liz. I don't really want to spoil much of this movie because I do want you guys to go and watch this. I feel like this is a very underrated movie that not a lot of people have seen. And, you know, everyone praises the first Phantasm movie, and they're like, you know, and it is an amazing movie, and it's an accomplishment in horror. But I feel Phantasm 2 goes overlooked, and I think it is on par with the first Phantasm movie. You know, but you have to go into it thinking it's not the same thing as the first Phantasm movie. It's a different kind of beast. It carries those themes from the first Phantasm movie, but it amps it up to 11, and it's an action film. It's a road movie action film, and that is enough on its own to make you go and watch this movie. You know, I love sequels that keep the continuity of the first movie, but are their own thing. You can watch them on their own, and you can love it for just as a movie, and that's what this movie does. Angus Scrimm.
Play a good game, boy. Come east if you dare. Get the fuck
who plays a tall man in all of the Phantasm movies. He comes back for this one, and he is amazing. He has the perfect look for a horror villain, and that's why he's gone down in history as the tall man. This look on his face, and you watch him in interviews, and he comes off as just the sweetest guy in the world. He's so sinister in this movie. He's the guy that you feel like would be in your nightmares, and that's what makes him perfect in these movies. Another great thing about what this movie does is it takes, in the first Phantasm movie, nothing is really explained. It's like a dream. You can't explain a dream. This movie doesn't explain everything, but it gives you just little hints at the mythology of who the tall man is and where does he come from. There's this like other dimension that where him and his minions come from, and what are they doing with these bodies? They're kind of like using them to build up this army in this other dimension, and they don't go overboard. They don't explain, like, oh, what's his motivation for, is he going to take over the world or anything? They don't go in that detailed of it, but they give you enough to just keep you interested and to keep you just, like coming back for more. You don't really need to explain that kind of stuff. It's just, this guy is just a creepy, interdimensional being who is going to haunt your dreams and who's going to kill you. That's enough to just be terrified about. Now, the Blu-ray that I have, this is Shout Factory put this out a number of years ago, and Shout Factory, their subdivision, Scream Factory, puts out all of their horror films. I cannot praise them enough for the job that they do, and everyone in the genre knows who Scream Factory is, and they have built up such a trust in the community that, everyone's going to throw down big bucks to buy one of their Blu-rays, and and it's because they put so much love and effort into these discs. One of the best things that they do for most of the films that they put out, they usually come with a documentary on the making of the movies. Because most of the movies that Scream Factory put out with these horror movies, not a lot of people have discussed them. Not a lot of the creatives have done interviews to talk about the making of process. And so they make these documentaries and they just go all in on them. They talk about, from inception until release. And they're so well done, and I cannot praise them enough. There's an audio commentary with Don Coscarelli and Angus Scrimm and Reggie Bannister on here. They got their original theatrical trailers. They got like original interviews that they did, from like back in the 80s. Highly recommend you picking up this Blu-ray. You can find it on Amazon for cheap, I bet. But it means the world to Shout Factory if you go to their website and you buy it directly from them. You're directly supporting the business too, so the money's going right to them. It's not going to Amazon, to anyone else. Go right to the shoutfactory.com. You pick up this Blu-ray. Highly recommend it. You won't be disappointed. So yeah, Phantasm 2, Don Coscarelli. Go check it out. You won't be disappointed. It's got action. It's got horror. It's got a little bit of comedy in there. It's got romance too. Just go. It is a perfect movie, and it just you watch it and you feel great afterwards. It makes you want to go make a movie. That's how I feel about this movie. Thank you for tuning in today. Tune in tomorrow. Find me on Facebook. Find me on Instagram at supertramp_Kyle. Me and my buddy Alden are doing a podcast, and hopefully it'll be released soon. We've banked a number of episodes. We just need to upload them. That's going to be called Late Night Lycanthrope Podcast. Just look it up. It's simple. So thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, do what you do. Treat others the way you want to be treated. I'll see you tomorrow.
Phantasm 2.
It's only a dream.
It's a dream.
No, it's not.